Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of Take Charge Now. In today's world, tipping has become an almost automatic expectation. We're seeing prompts popping up everywhere from coffee shops to online deliveries. And this trend can make it really difficult to decide when tipping is truly warranted and when it's okay to skip without feeling cheap. The practice of tipping, if you think about it, originated way back in the 17th century Europe. It was a way then for aristocrats to reward their servants. By the mid-19th century, tipping had made its way to the US, became standard practice, particularly in hospitality and service industries. Do you remember when a 10% tip was considered generous? Well, by the 1950s, that number had gone to 15%. And today, when you go to a restaurant, well, some will say it's between 18 and 20. I would say it's north of that. And I get it. This increase reflects not only inflation, but also a greater recognition of the really hard work and the low wages in service jobs. But here's something else, digital payment systems. They now include that automatic tipping prompt, suggesting percentages that can make us not only feel obligated, but to feel really uncomfortable to tip in ways and places we never did before. And I get it, it's convenience for businesses, but it can put pressure on us to leave those gratuities, as I said, sort of traditionally where it was once optional. If you really think about it, in fast food and counter service cafes, you're doing the work. You place the order, you pay at the counter, you often collect your own food. There may be a tip jar, but now there's a digital prompt. Tipping in these scenarios, many would argue, is not mandatory. If you do receive exceptional service, feel free to tip, but it's perfectly acceptable not to. Think about environments like a grocery store, a clothing boutique, electronic shop. Tipping isn't customary. Why? Because many of these employees are in settings that aren't reliant on tips because they have a regular wage. Self-service establishments such as buffets, food courts, other types of venues similar to this do not generally require tips. You're doing most of the work, and any service that's actually provided is often minimal. Additionally, tipping is not expected in the professional services arena. If you have a medical appointment, you don't tip. A legal consultation, professional fees will be charged by these individuals for the expertise that they have, and they're just not part of the transaction. Here's where I think it's starting to get a little gray. For online orders where you pick up the items yourself, or digital services with no direct personal interaction, many would argue tipping is not necessary. Delivery drivers should be tipped, but if you go to the store and you pick it up yourself or have a purely digital transaction, you're not obligated to tip. So I just think that there are subtle nuances here. And something that I often think about is if the service provided is standard, sometimes you forego the tip or you give the basic minimum. If it's exceptional, you decide to give a more exceptional tip. Sometimes a small gratuity or a positive review, but it's understanding the nuances that make sense to you. Because as you navigate the landscape of tipping, you don't want to feel pressure in every situation. And I get it. The bottom line, in COVID, yes, we tipped. But many believe after COVID, all of this automation, the tipping trend just might be at a tipping point.